Now in his late 60s, Trevor Bedford has been around horses all his life. As a boy and a young man, he worked on horseback on cattle stations run by Western Australia's government. From 4 a.m. to midnight, he'd break in horses, fix fences and round up cows. His pay? A ration of food, somewhere to sleep, and a tiny cash allowance for drinks. It was effectively slave labour.
All the manager was all white, and all the slave, or whatever you're going to call them, was all black and my colour.
Until the 1970s, on cattle stations across Australia, there were Aboriginal people who weren't paid at all or whose wages could be legally held back by their employers in trust. But the trust money was never handed over. Wages, in effect, were stolen. Now they are artists, but as girls and young women, Mary, Nancy and Mabel worked in the gardens and the homes of their white masters.
We never get no money. We used to work for taka. Bread and beef. That's all. Never get paid.
In 2012, despite a report recommending compensation of many tens of thousands of dollars per person, the Western Australia government paid just $2,000 to those who'd once worked on its land. Those who'd worked on private land, like these ladies, got nothing. The government says lost records meant it was unable to repay the actual amounts of money withheld. But Aboriginal pensioners say that's no excuse, and that there's another way to work out fair compensation based on today's cattle industry. The cattle stations, as they're called here, were built with Aboriginal labour. Today, some are huge, the size of small countries, and the cattle industry overall is a big part of Australia's economy. Legal experts say governments could estimate the historic contribution Aboriginal people made towards building Australia's cattle industry and pay those still alive compensation based on a proportion of that industry's value today.
And surely, given that some of that wealth was acquired illegitimately, that should somehow be distributed back to those peoples.
Some Aboriginal people, Trevor Bedford among them, are considering an appeal to the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They hope international pressure on Australia's governments might persuade them to be more generous before, for Bedford and others, it's too late to right a historic wrong. Andrew Thomas, Al Jazeera, Halls Creek, Western Australia.